Thank you guys. You see, I've got my Thanksgiving turkey here next to me. How's everybody doing? Where are you from? Let me know. Tell me in the chat. That was such a nice introduction, Brandon. Thank you. Hey,
Thanks.
Lisa.
I'll give my back time to you.
Okay, thank you. Lisa's here. Yay. I thought I was doing yesterday's webinar. Lisa was ready, but it's today. Hi, Nina. Let me know where you guys are from. Hi, Sophia. Yay, Sophia is here. Linda, okay, Nina's from Shanghai. Well, who else do we have here today? I know we've got Brandon. I'm not sure who. Okay, and Ivy. Max. Hey, Max. Sophia's from Canada. Elsa, Shanghai. Wonderful. Hey, Max, where are you from? And Linda's from Shanghai. Great. Okay. Yolanda, that's right. You're from Canada. Great. All right, somebody on my continent. And Max, you're both on my continent of North America. All right, guys, let me go ahead and start. I've got my turkey here, and you guys know we're doing it on Thanksgiving today. Okay, so in other words, happy Thanksgiving. And I have this here, and this has all the Pilgrims and some of the Indians. So we'll talk about why I have that for Thanksgiving here. And I've also got my other turkey here. I have a lot of these around the house. Okay, so he says hi, gobble, gobble. Okay, yep, there must be another student called Lisa. Lots of Lisa. Lisa's a common name. All right, guys, let me go ahead and start with our book. And then I've got some cool videos to show you like I normally do. All right. What is Thanksgiving? Thanksgiving Day is a harvest holiday. Harvest is like when you go in the field, see these guys and they're working in the fields and they're gathering the wheat or whatever the crop they're growing. On this day, Americans and Canadians give thanks for the food and blessings they have been giving. So you guys noticed at the beginning of the webinar, I wrote in the chat, I'm thankful so much for you guys. You guys are here for webinar because you guys, I know that I love webinars. Thanksgiving Day is in autumn. That's fall. In autumn, farmers harvest or gather their crops. So harvest is our big word. In the United States, the day after Thanksgiving is one of the busiest shopping days of the year. People start to shop for Christmas. Now, a little different this year. This year we have the COVID virus in the United States. And so a lot of shopping will be done online. Because I'm one of the people that goes and shop, they call it Black Friday because Thursday is the day for Thanksgiving. Everyone wakes up early the next morning, or at least I do, after I teach my students at Ivy, and I hit the ground running and shop till I drop. So I like to shop. But anyway, this year it's going to be kind of different because they don't want lots and lots of people gathered, say, outside Walmart or other places in line to get all the goods because a lot of things will be discounted. Like you guys just had the busiest shopping day in China. I think that was 2 weeks ago. And I said, ooh, I wanted to get in on that and see what good deals there were. Anyway, be a little different this year. Farmers grow enough food to last them during the cold winter months. Thanksgiving is a time to give thanks for good harvest. See, the leaves are turning. Thanksgiving Day is always in autumn when the leaves change colors. It's always the fourth Thursday in November, which will be this week, this Thursday. That's why me and my turkey are ready. And what I'll do is I'll cover his ears while I say this. I defrost the turkey. Right now, my turkey is in the freezer. It's frozen. And I will start to defrost it on Monday. And I'll be gone picking up my son. You guys know that I've done the webinar a few times. When I've picked up my son, I've been in the hotel room. So I'll go pick him up, but I'll leave it in the refrigerator to kind of defrost a little bit and thaw. And then it'll be ready for cooking on Thursday morning. A national holiday. So there's no school, there's no mail delivery, there's only a few stores open, not many. Thanksgiving Day is a national holiday. For many, it is the day off from school or work. Banks, post offices, schools, and many businesses close for the day. In America, President George Washington made Thursday, November the 26th, 1789, a Thanksgiving holiday. It was not celebrated again the next year. It says, did you know President Abraham Lincoln made Thanksgiving Day a national holiday to help bring Americans together during the Civil War? So it really wasn't a big holiday until then. Let me stop our book for just a second and show you a few things. And okay, let me go down to Show you guys my PowerPoint. And we've got Tom Turkey on that. I just call him Tom. You can call the turkey anything you want. Okay, so there's the Peanuts gang, Snoopy and Charlie Brown, if you've ever seen them celebrating Thanksgiving. And they'll have a big show on TV, a big cartoon. I'm going to do a webinar on Snoopy maybe in a couple months. I thought that'd be a good one to do. So the first Thanksgiving, let's talk about that. Actually, let me go a little forward and show you the presidents our book just talked about. Here's George Washington that our book just talked about, then President Lincoln. It became a national holiday then, remember, because he wanted to bring people together during the Civil War. The Civil War was in the 1800s, and that was when the north part of the United States was fighting the south part of the United States. And then in 1941, President Roosevelt signed a bill into law that made it a national holiday to be celebrated the fourth Thursday in November. Now, I've done a webinar on Mount Rushmore before, and these are 3 of the faces out of the 4 that are on that big mountain in rock that are carved. The other one's Thomas Jefferson, who's not up here. Okay, let me see what you guys are asking in the chat. Remember, we'll have time for questions at the end as well, too. Okay. Hey, Joanna, I'm glad she's here. Hey, Ellie, hopefully Austin's with you. Okay, so we've got our turkey, and he's happy here. Probably not many turkeys are happy this year. George Washington, like we said, made it a day in November in 1789. Then President Abraham Lincoln, and then Franklin Roosevelt. Let's go back to our book, and then we'll go back to a couple little things I'm going to show you about Thanksgiving. Okay, this is a different president. This is the same president, President Roosevelt, like I said in the PowerPoint, that made it a day in 1939. President Franklin Roosevelt changed it to the 4th Thursday in November. Past celebrations. This is where I want to start off with about how we have Thanksgiving, and then some fun stuff like we do and what we eat at Thanksgiving. People gave thanks for the good harvest long before the North American Thanksgiving. Thousands of years ago, people believed that gods controlled the seasons. To thank their gods, people held special harvest festivals. This is the ancient god Demeter, the god of the crops. So in ancient Greece, people held festivals every year to honor the god of the crops. They were thankful for what they had that were being grown that year. Hundreds of years ago, people held a harvest festival called Michaelmas, kind of like Christmas. They celebrated by having a feast. This tradition of celebrating harvest with feasts is still happening today. In North America, we call it Thanksgiving Day. These are the people celebrating that long ago. The Pilgrims. Now, I know you guys had a webinar a couple weeks ago on the lost colony. So a colony is a group of people that form their own little group in a new area. Okay, that is right near me. If you went to the Lost Colony webinar a couple weeks ago that another teacher did, that is right by me, where my home is. In 1620, almost 100 pilgrims left England, that must have been cold, and founded the colony of Plymouth in New England. Some left because the king would not let them worship the way that they wanted. The leaders in England forced others to leave. They sailed on a ship called the Mayflower. The Pilgrims landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts in December of 1620. Can you imagine being on this ship in the icy cold Atlantic Ocean? I feel cold even thinking about that. The water was cold. The air was probably very cold. There was probably ice on the ship. Let me show you what it looked like then, because they just made a replica. That means a copy of the Mayflower. And let me pull that up. Here's the way they started, then I'll show you the replica, the copy. Kind of neat. I always look for neat stuff to show you guys. Okay, so you see this? And this guy's going to talk for a second about how they landed. Here you go, what our book just said, December 21st. You know, December is very cold anyway.
On the 21st of December 1620, the first of the Mayflower Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, Massachusetts, where they established the Plymouth colony. The Mayflower had departed the English port of Plymouth in September 1620, bound for the colony of Virginia. Of the 102 passengers on board,
so they were coming to Virginia, where I live. They did not make it that far. They settled up north of me in a different state.
37 were Puritan separatists who intended to establish a new settlement in the New World.
This is the actual writing of these people. They wrote as they aborted the ship their names. Isn't that really pretty writing?
The rest were servants, farmers, adventurers, and tradesmen who were there to support the fledgling colony. After a stormy 66-day Atlantic crossing, land was sighted at the start of November. The Mayflower anchored in the large natural harbour of Provincetown, much further north than their intended destination, although the
Now, so they're supposed to come to Virginia. They landed up north. I think they probably saw the first land and said, let's go ahead and land here, guys. It's been a long 66 days.
area had already been explored by Europeans. Since they didn't have a patent to settle here, yet had run out of provisions on board the ship, the
That means they had no more food. That's what provisions means. They had no more food and they thought, let's go ahead and try to land here and eat something.
Pilgrims wrote the Mayflower Compact that served as a governing charter for a new colony, and so began to prepare exploratory parties. The first expeditions around Provincetown took some corn and experienced skirmishes with local Native American tribes.
That means they pulled in, and when they said parties, they probably said, okay, you three go that way, you five go that way, try to find something for us to eat. And they got in some skirmishes. That means they got in some little arguments with Indians, and Indians probably said, you know, who are you and why are you here? This is our land. And I'm sure the Pilgrims had guns and other things and probably weren't so nice and said, we're taking some corn. So even though this looks like sometimes it was very nice, it may have been kind of, kind of scary for both sides because they didn't know how the other people were going to react.
So the decision was made to search further afield. On the 21st of December, the first landing party stepped ashore at Plymouth, which had been named by John Smith 6 years earlier. Here they found an abandoned village whose native inhabitants had been wiped out by a series of epidemics. Despite this, the site offered a good defensive position and large cleared areas that would be suitable for building their new settlement. The first winter was harsh and, by March, over half the settlers who had arrived on the Mayflower had died.
How awful.
However, the next few months saw the colony sign a peace treaty with the leader of the local native people, who went on to share their knowledge of the local environment to help the Pilgrims begin to build a successful and self-sufficient colony.
So probably, guys, the Indians were already there and they thought we might as well be nice to these people because they have guns and swords and, we might as well get along with them. And so these Indians taught Pilgrims how to raise maize, which is corn. They probably taught them how to sow the fields. And then in turn, these people probably helped them, showed them how to do some other things and make other things. So it was kind of like they both helped each other after a while. Okay, let me show you guys another thing. They have a replica they've made called the Mayflower 2. I want to show you what that looks like. Okay, so this is a news anchor. He's got his mask down here. This is Plymouth today in Massachusetts, and this is the Mayflower they made, a new one that looks just like the Mayflower that the Pilgrims used. So they just launched this a couple months ago for people to see, and you can tour and walk on this thing up there and look at it. Kind of neat. Let's see what he says.
Excitement behind me is something we have not seen in years. The Mayflower 2 is back here in Plymouth. And before the pandemic, there had been a lot of plans for this ship to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims' arrival. Obviously, a lot of things have changed, but the ship is back and tours will begin soon. With much fanfare, the Mayflower 2 sailed into Plymouth Harbor more than 3 years after departing for a multi-million-dollar restoration. The work is done in time for the 400th anniversary of the original Mayflower arriving in Plymouth.
It's 4th of July and Christmas all together.
The Mayflower 2 left Mass Maritime this morning and made its way through the Cape Cod Canal. Sky 5 shows the 64-year-old replica ship sailing on its own power. Back on land, spectators filled Pilgrim Memorial State Park. Most were wearing masks. Everyone was excited to see the ship, some for the first time.
We're going to see a Mayflower. Mommy told me the story.
I've been visiting the Mayflower ever since I was a kid. Plus, I'm a history fanatic. I love the history behind it, and we miss it. It's a big part of what town is. It's a big part of Plymouth.
Today is really an exciting day for us because we are America's hometown, and we were expecting most of America to be here this year. But because of 2020 and what we're all going through together, this is like one really bright, wonderful light to a year that was a big disappointment to a lot of people here.
And so a lot of people have been asking how soon they can go on board. Well, tours will begin on Wednesday, and the tours will be timed in order to limit the crowd size. And so advanced ticket purchase is recommended. Of course, it doesn't cost anything to come here to the park and just take in the beauty.
Isn't that neat? So they made a Mayflower replica, and it'll be there probably for a long, long, long time for people to see. Kind of neat there. All right, let me go ahead and see if we have, yes, some lists are long, names are long, exactly. All right, let me go back and show you one more thing. And since we talked about a harvest and what a harvest is, pumpkins, things like that, are still for the fall, and harvesting means getting the crops like we saw in our book, and that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving. And I can tell you right now, guys, that mostly around here it's getting more time for Christmassy things. Sometimes people like to skip over decorating for Thanksgiving, but I've still got my pumpkins and things out in the front, and my table's decorated for Thanksgiving right now. I don't really cook very well, but I'm going to be cooking this year. So stay tuned on that. I'll be doing a webinar in a couple weeks about Christmas, and you guys can ask me how it went there. Make sure that I ate something. Anyway, okay, so we've got the first Thanksgiving. The Indians and the Pilgrims met. Here's some cool cookies people made, little Indians and turkeys. That's kind of neat. Little pilgrims and Indian faces on those cookies. And then we've got the people here. Looks like they're all getting along very well, the Indians and the Pilgrims. Well, let's see if that's true. Let me show you one more thing, and then we'll go to something else. And let me make sure that this, I think the closed caption was on, but that's okay. All right, let me share the screen, and then we'll go back to our book after I show you this brain pop. It'll come up. Okay. Everybody see the nice turkey sitting there. They've got some apples and raisins and some figs and some oranges around there. When I make a turkey, it won't look like this with apples, but hopefully it will be cooked. Mm-hmm. Uh-oh.
It's a little dry.
That's gravy he's pouring. People put gravy on their potatoes. It's kind of a liquidy thing you might make on your meat if it's very dry. So let's see what Moby's saying here.
Thanks? Dear Tim and Moby, how did Thanksgiving begin? From Carrie and Tibby. Well, you've probably heard the story of a group of settlers called the Pilgrims. How in 1620 they came to America in a ship called the Mayflower. How they made friends with the native people and had them over for a feast. And they called it Thanksgiving, and we've been celebrating it ever since. Only problem is, a lot of that stuff is slightly inaccurate. They weren't called pilgrims, and they didn't dress that way. They wouldn't have called the meal Thanksgiving either. For the settlers, Thanksgiving meant a religious day of fasting and prayer. This was more like a harvest festival.
So fasting means nobody's eating. It's kind of the opposite, isn't it?
As for their relationship with the Wampanoag, well, friends is kind of pushing it. The Wampanoag are a Native American people. Back then, they controlled a chunk of what's now Massachusetts and Rhode Island. They'd been living there for thousands of years in dozens of different villages, and they'd been trading with European visitors for over a century. They'd never allowed any permanent settlement on their land, though. Then, in 1616, a disease brought by European traders swept the region. In just a few years, 2/3 of the Wampanoag died. Usamequin, their leader, was worried about invasion. The Narragansett, a rival nation nearby, had been untouched by the disease. So, when the Mayflower landed on his doorstep, he saw an opportunity. The folks on the Mayflower were English. Back home, they'd belonged to the Church of England, the official state religion. But they believed the church had strayed from true Christianity. When it became clear they couldn't change the church, they started their own separate faith. These separatists left for Holland, where they were free to practice their beliefs. Eventually, they set sail for North America to build a society based around their version of Christianity. When they finally arrived, it was November, and winter was in the air. About 100 people stepped on shore, weak and sick from a difficult journey. They were totally unprepared for the harsh weather and the challenges of their new life. Low on food, they stole from Wampanoag stockpiles, and they robbed graves, taking jewelry and other valuables. By midwinter, people were dying every day of starvation and illness. Like the Wampanoag, the settlers feared their weakness would invite attack. So they took drastic steps to hide it. They dragged the sick from their beds, propping them against trees with guns in their hands. And they buried their dead at night. Only half of them survived the winter. One day that March, a native man walked into the settlers' camp. This was Samoset, a leader from Maine who was staying with the Wampanoag. To the settlers' astonishment, he said, "Welcome, Englishmen." He'd been sent by the Wampanoag to arrange a meeting with the newcomers. A few days later, Usamequin stopped by, along with a little security. Both groups were suspicious of the other. They exchanged hostages so that neither side would pull any tricks. Only then did John Carver, the governor of Plymouth, sit down with Usamequin. He called Usamequin by his title, Massasoit, which means great leader. They shared a ceremonial drink and agreed to terms. They would always meet in peace, and they would defend each other from attack. The treaty saved Plymouth. Usamequin sent an English-speaking man named Tisquantum to stay with the settlers. The English called him Squanto, and he taught them how to survive. He showed them how to plant crops that would thrive, and how to use fish as fertilizer.
See how they were kind of helping each other. So he told them how to plant things using fish bones as good fertilizer for the soil. They probably did not know that.
Tisquantum had actually grown up right there. Before the town became Plymouth, the Wampanoag called it Pawtuxet. It was one of the villages that had been wiped out by disease. The separatists chose the dead village as the site of their settlement. The hard work of clearing the land had already been done by Tisquantum's people. And thanks to his help, Plymouth had a bountiful harvest to celebrate in the fall of 1621. Well, the settlers didn't send out formal invitations. The Wampanoag heard gunfire coming from Plymouth. Were the settlers attacking or being attacked? Usamequin brought 90 men to find out. They found that the settlers were shooting off guns to celebrate the harvest. Usamequin decided they would join the feast and maybe keep an eye on things, although there wasn't quite enough food for 90 unexpected guests. So the Wampanoag went out hunting and brought back some deer. The eating, drinking, and celebrating went on for 3 days, and the alliance between the two groups would last almost half a century. Right, so how come we're celebrating this meal 4 centuries later? Well, in 1863, Abraham Lincoln established Thanksgiving as a national holiday.
Remember, our book just said that. There's the White House. This is in D.C., Washington, D.C. I was just there last weekend.
He thought it might help unite the nation during the Civil War. Most of the Thanksgiving traditions we have today came from that time. Turkey and pumpkin pie were popular in New England in 1863, not 1621. And those buckled hats? 19th century artists made them up. They thought it made the so-called Pilgrims look old-timey, and the tale of their struggle made a perfect national myth, an inspiring story about a country's values and history. The settlers were cast as the first Americans, boldly taming a wilderness, even in the midst of great hardship, taking time to give thanks for what they had. No, bravery and gratitude are awesome qualities that we should all try to live up to. That's kind of the purpose of national myths, to provide examples of our best selves. But myths oversimplify complex stories. We know that Massachusetts was not a wilderness. It was home to a civilization that went back thousands of years. And Plymouth's founding was a dark turning point for those people. They were pushed off their land and had to adapt to a different way of life to survive. That pattern was repeated across the continent for the next...
So once the English came in there, they started kind of taking over, is what he's saying. By the way, Cape Cod, Massachusetts is right up here. Where they were supposed to go was Virginia, right down here where I'm at. Okay, so that's where they were supposed to land. So they landed there. They were supposed to land there.
Next 200 years, which is why some Native Americans consider Thanksgiving a day of mourning. For those of us who do celebrate, we can honor that perspective. Taking time to consider it wouldn't be a bad addition to your list of Thanksgiving traditions.
Okay, so Thanksgiving will be this Thursday, and there's all kind of a little history about it. Let me go back to our book. And we talked about the Mayflower. I'm going to show you where they landed in a second. Okay. It says the leaders in England forced others to leave. They sailed on a ship called the Mayflower. The Pilgrims landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts in December 1620. We just talked about that. The first Thanksgiving. The Pilgrims needed to plant crops in the spring of 1621. The crops would feed their families in their new colony. Native Americans, called the Wampanoag, we just saw those, lived in this area long before the Pilgrims arrived. The Wampanoag taught the Pilgrims what crops to grow. Pilgrims wanted to give thanks for their harvest. There's the Native Americans teaching them. It says, did you know the Pilgrims had 90 Native Americans share their first Thanksgiving? Wow. It says they invited the Pilgrims, well, it kind of stops there. They invited the Indians. Okay, they invited turkeys. Pilgrims may have enjoyed wild turkeys for their first Thanksgiving. No one knows for sure. Today, eating turkey on this holiday is very popular. Many people in the United States call Thanksgiving Day Turkey Day. President Abraham Lincoln was the first American to pardon the Thanksgiving Day turkey. Pardon means you say, okay, you're not going to be killed. We'll put you in a zoo. This pardon meant the turkey would not be cooked for the president's Thanksgiving dinner. The president's pardon became a yearly tradition in 1947. In the United States, turkey farmers raised over 46 million turkeys for Thanksgiving dinners. Wow. People celebrate Thanksgiving Day by sharing a big dinner. Traditional Thanksgiving dinners include turkey served with cranberry sauce and sweet potatoes. Most families enjoy pumpkin pie for dessert. Now, I'll let you on a little secret. I'm going to prepare cranberry sauce and the turkey and sweet potatoes. I ordered 3 pies. I'm not going to make them. Some people make them, but not this person. You don't want a pie that I made. So I actually ordered them from a local place, and they're going to deliver them on Wednesday to me. Today's Thanksgiving dinner includes some of the same foods the Pilgrim ate at their feast. Native Americans taught the Pilgrims to grow corn, beans, and pumpkins. These foods helped the Pilgrims survive. We still enjoy them today. Now, this looks like a typical family dinner. In my dinner, I have candles and things like that, but they probably won't be happy because they're probably going to go, okay, hopefully this tastes very good. We'll see. I'll let you know what happens. Let me go back. I want to show you where the Pilgrims landed. You guys saw the Mayflower. There is a place called Plymouth Rock. Okay, and it's actually the place where they stepped off, and people go visit. They believe they stepped off there in Plymouth, Massachusetts. This is an actual replica of the Mayflower, again, that they just did. And they show you Plymouth Rock. I want you to see that. Okay, this guy is going to tell us a little bit about that. Then we're going to go talk about Thanksgiving dinners.
Real United States, and welcome to Plymouth, Massachusetts. We are here at the site of the landing of the first English settlers in the North American continent. And behind me is, in fact, the Mayflower II. It is a replica of the Mayflower, the original ship that the Pilgrims came over on to land here nearby in 1620. Now, the significance of this town today, besides that, is that it is the home of Plymouth Rock, which is the legendary landing site of the Pilgrims when they first arrived on American soil. And this is the sort of ship that they came in. This is apparently identical, or nearly as possible, recreation of the original ship that they came on. So you can...
Okay, so I'm going to show you the exact stone. Make sure we have enough time here. This is the place people go. It's the same harbor. This is called a harbor where boats go.
That they pulled their boat right up next to that rock in 1620. They got off the boat, they got onto the rock, they get off the rock, they get onto the beach. Whether or not it happened, it's hard to say for sure. I think that they used it as a landmark when they came ashore rather than actually stepping on it, but that's the story of it. So they land here in 1620. They get through the winter. It's a very tough winter. About half of the people are dead by the end of the first winter. They get through the summer, and one of the common things at this time period is once you have the harvest in, is you have a bit of a celebration. The hard work is done, you've got all the food in, and you want to eat some of the food, essentially. So they have that celebration, and Massasoit shows up with about 90 of the Wampanoag people. They bring 5 deer. There's a lot of things on the menu. Some of them we would recognize, some of them we wouldn't. Deer are certainly on the menu. Poultry of some sort are going to be on the menu. It's more likely that it's duck rather than turkey, but turkey is certainly a possibility. No cranberries yet. They don't have sugar to sweeten them. But that first Thanksgiving would have taken place 500 to 1,000 feet from where we're standing right now. The real importance of the rock doesn't matter how big it is, and it doesn't matter whether or not they stepped on it, because the real importance of the rock is that rock as a symbol. And people have to decide for themselves what Plymouth Rock means to them. And when people leave here, that's our goal, is to get people looking at the rock not just as a rock, but looking at it symbolically.
So we don't know if that's the rock that they stepped on or not, but people call it Plymouth Rock. It is a city called Plymouth. And let me go back. My turkey is falling asleep here. And let me go back to our book. And people that are eating their Thanksgiving dinner. Some people sing songs. Different holidays bring different songs. So here's some people singing hymns. On Thanksgiving Day, people like to sing traditional songs and hymns. One popular hymn is "Come, Ye Thankful People, Come." Honestly, I've never heard this song, but some people do sing. That looks like a lot of fun. American Lydia Maria Child wrote the famous Thanksgiving song, "Over the River." It goes, "Over the river and through the woods, to grandmother's house we go." I'm not going to sing anymore because it'll probably hurt your ears, but that's how it goes. I have heard that song. This song shares her memories of traveling to her grandparents' home for Thanksgiving dinner. Thanksgiving symbols. Here is the pumpkin. Here is the corn. Guys, we call this a cornucopia, this little horn here. It says the cornucopia is a popular Thanksgiving symbol. It is sometimes called a horn of plenty. It is a horn or a basket shaped like a horn overflowing with food. The cornucopia is shaped like a horn. It is sometimes called the horn of plenty. For Thanksgiving, people decorate with pumpkins and corn. Remember that Native Americans taught the Pilgrims to grow these food. Maize or Indian corn is a colorful corn often used for decorating during Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving parades. I'm going to show you this one. Many cities have Thanksgiving Day parades. The parades have floats, clowns, marching bands, and even Santa Claus. New York City has the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Day Parade. On Thanksgiving morning, thousands of people stand on the streets to watch the parade. Millions more watch on television. I watch this every year. This year they are going to have, but no one is allowed to line the streets and be there because of the virus. So it's going to be a little different this year. Thank you, Lisa. My turkey's cute. All right, let me show you a little bit more, and then we'll go back into the parade I'm going to show you. Okay, so again, here is where the first Thanksgiving was held. Here's Boston, Massachusetts. Here's Plymouth. Okay, this is a long piece of land that stretches out here called Cape Cod. Many people go here to vacation. This is up north, so it's getting pretty cold there, even right now, and it's November. Here's some dishes that are sent out or that are sitting out for people to choose from to eat on Thanksgiving. The most prominent historic Thanksgiving event in American popular culture is the 1621 celebration at the Plymouth Plantation, where the settlers held a harvest feast after a successful growing season. This event that Americans commonly call the first Thanksgiving was celebrated by the Pilgrims after their first harvest in the New World in October 1621. This feast lasted 3 days, and that's what we just heard that man say. It was attended by 90 Native Americans and 53 Pilgrims. The Wampanoag Indians who attended the first Thanksgiving had occupied the land for thousands of years and were key to the survival of the colonists during the first year they arrived in 1620. Remember, it's a very cold winter. After the Pilgrims successfully harvested their first crops in autumn 1621, at least 140 people gathered to eat and partake in games, and they ate deer, like they said. The Indians brought 5 deer, as the story goes. The man just said they could have had poultry, which is like chicken, maybe not turkey, but they had some sort of poultry, which would be chicken or turkey. Okay, let me go back to, this is the presidential pardon that the book just talked about. It was started in 1989. After the animal gets a pardon, they live out the rest of their life in Virginia. So here's our president pardoning the turkey last year. So they'll probably pardon one this year. And it's kind of just a symbol. I mean, he does get pardoned from getting killed, but it's kind of a cool Thanksgiving tradition. Okay, and here's what a table might look like. And here's a cornucopia we just talked about. That's a big word, cornucopia, a horn of plenty. Here is a big Thanksgiving meal, and there's no way they could eat all of this. Here's the gravy we just saw Moby dump on Tim's turkey that was too dry. Here's some mashed potatoes, and this is probably sweet potatoes. I like to make mine not like this, but a lot of people put marshmallows on top and put it in the oven for a while. Lots of different things here, and then they'll bring out some pies for dessert. Okay, so some typical things somebody might eat, a family might eat, is turkey and ham, at least turkey. Side dishes are things like string beans, cranberry sauce, potatoes. Here's stuffing. Stuffing is bread and some other things with it. And then desserts, things like pumpkin pie. People also watch a lot of football that day. Here is a parade that they just showed you in our book. Let me show you that. Let's not bring politics into this, guys. Okay. Here's the Thanksgiving parade they just had on. If you guys probably couldn't see that, let me go back to share this so you guys can see the part of our book, and then I'll show you what it looks like at a typical Macy's Day parade for Thanksgiving, which I love to watch on TV. One of the things I want to do is actually go there. It's very cold, and it's a long day of waiting and watching lots of different floats come down. Let me show you what it looks like in real life, what we see on TV. They call it the Macy's Day Parade. Lots of high school bands might go there, lots of floats, lots of cheerleaders, very fun. It's on TV. So here's some cheerleaders. NYPD is the New York Police Department. And you can see a big turkey float coming down the avenue there. And I've been on this street many times in New York City. Okay, so this is the typical beginning of the parade. There's the turkey, people walking around. They have costumes on because a lot of them have to hold the float. See, this is a float, the big balloons. They have to hold it with strings so that it doesn't get blown away. These people carry it. Okay, there's lots of different lots of different singers, different acts come down the street. Lots of different floats. Every year it's different floats. Here's a cornucopia. See that float? A cornucopia, and there's pumpkin floats, big balloons behind it. And there's another ad, which I just got out. Now Snoopy's going to come down the street after this. Spoiler alert. I lift him up. Lots of different people get invited to this to participate, whether they're cheerleaders or bands from high schools. Um, wow, there's another cool little float. Lots of important people like celebrities are waving. There's that boy band. I forget their name. They're in the parade. Sometimes they're performing their songs. Sometimes they're just waving. I'm sure they sang a song. There's Diary of a Wimpy Kid float. Okay, every year there's different floats, like I said. Let me show you one more. Okay, here comes Spongebob. So normally this is on TV, and lots of times for people that are sitting at home, we see them perform. This is somebody that's videoing, it's actually there. Pretty cool. Okay, Spongebob. And a lot of times last year, they almost could not do this because the wind was so bad, because the wind comes through these big skyscrapers really fast. Cool dinosaur. Okay, the trolls. And here comes my favorite every year is this guy, the elf on the shelf. Okay, and they'll have him sitting upright once they get where the TV is. I'd love to be one of the people that walks in this. It's a beautiful day for this one. So this is last year's. Okay, there's another band. And at the end, they usually have Santa. There's a nutcracker. That is a symbol for Christmas. Okay, and I've been right on this street. There is Olaf from Frozen. Okay, so these have to be, blown up and held down by these strings, like I said. And then at the very end, the grand finale, after the candy canes go by, there he is, Santa. That's usually the grand finale, meaning the very end of the very exciting. Hear all the people yelling, he's coming down, he's coming. Very exciting. Okay, so I want to show you what the Macy's Day Parade looked like. All right, let's go back to our book. And I told you guys people watch football on this day after they eat their dinner. Families often play or watch sports on television on Thanksgiving Day. If it's beautiful out, people will go outside and throw the football around. Football is the holiday's most popular sport. The American football tradition began in the 1800s. Many football teams still played games on Thanksgiving Day. The National Football League's competition is called the Thanksgiving Day Classic. Giving thanks. Gathering to watch parades and sports is fun. A turkey dinner is delicious. However, the true reason for the holiday is to give thanks for the good things in our lives. People give thanks for plentiful food and good health. Other people are thankful for spending time with people they love. In some families, each person says what they're thankful for. And a lot of people do this on their little placemat that they're eating on. They might go around the table and say what they're thankful for. They might do a craft afterwards. Kind of fun. People help the poor or homeless at Thanksgiving. Some donate food or money to people in need. Others volunteer their work at charities. People help cook and serve turkey dinners at local soup kitchens. They also clean up afterwards. Thanksgiving is a time of being with people. Many visit relatives or friends who cannot go out to visit them. Lots of food drives are going on right now, especially with the pandemic. A food drive is an organized collection of food. After the food is collected, it is brought to a food bank or it is sorted and then given to the poor. Last year, my son did a big project and had boxes set up all over our school for people to bring in canned goods to give to the local soup kitchen. Thanksgiving in Canada. Two of you guys are in Canada. It says Thanksgiving in Canada became popular in the 1800s. Thanksgiving Day did not become a national holiday until 1957. Canadian Thanksgivings are similar to the U.S. holiday. People gather to share a meal and give thanks for plentiful harvest. Just like their neighbors, the Canadian Football League holds a Thanksgiving Day Classic on their Thanksgiving Day. It says in Canada, the harvest season is earlier than in the United States. That's because it's a little cooler up there. Okay, So there's a couple things. Let me look at the chat. I've got a couple more things to show you if I have time. Let's see. Let me go back to this. And let me show you what this looks like for the first Thanksgiving. This is somebody else's version of what could have happened. Like we talked about the Indians maybe not getting along with the settlers. It says the first Thanksgiving, what really happened. So he looks like he's pretty nice and he looks like he's pretty nice. Let's see what happens.
The meeting of Pilgrims and Indians that finished with an amazing dinner. The end. But there's more to the tale. This video will explain the events around the first Thanksgiving and how it's not the image ingrained in tradition.
Okay, there's one more thing I want to show you. There's where they landed, like I said. Let me show you guys. Let me stop sharing and go back to this. I have one more thing that goes with that. Hold on. And here we go. Let me show you this.
I'm Mary Chilton, and I am one of the original Pilgrims who survived a year of famine to celebrate the first Thanksgiving in the New World. After arriving in the New World, the first thing we needed to do was to write a document that would guide our new society. The men gathered together and wrote the Mayflower Compact. Every man who had traveled aboard the Mayflower signed the agreement on November 21st, 1620. Soon after the Mayflower Compact was signed, the men went exploring to find a place where we could build our new homes. After several days, they returned to the Mayflower with some corn they had found. "We think we will find a place to settle soon," they told us hopefully. We were relieved. "Oh, thank the Lord," we said. After 6 more weeks of exploration, our men sent word that they had found a place to settle. December 31st, 1620 was our first chance to see the place we would call home. We named it Plymouth. The weather in January was bad, but the men worked hard to cut logs for the settlement. First, they built a common house to store our tools, furnishings, and supplies. Then they built houses. The work went slowly because many people were ill, and more than half died in the great sickness that winter. My family was one of the hardest hit. I lost both my father and my mother. My father was the oldest pilgrim to make the voyage to the New World, and he died very quickly. My mother was a very strong woman, but she also died. I know in my heart that she died because she wanted me to live. She always made sure I ate first. She would give me some of her food because there wasn't really enough food for all of us to eat. By the end of the winter, more than half of those who had crossed on the Mayflower had died, but the older women were the hardest hit. Only 5 of the 18 original married women aboard the Mayflower survived. Although I was now an orphan with no mother or father, the other pilgrims took me in and treated me with kindness. With so many women dead, I found myself busier than ever. I had to help do the cooking and the laundry for the men and boys who had lost their wives and mothers. In March of 1621, a Native American came to our village. His name was Samoset. He walked into the village shouting,
"Welcome, welcome, Englishmen!"
Even though it was a very cold and windy day, Samoset was naked except for a cloth around his waist and moccasins on his feet. The men talked to Samoset for a long time. Samoset left the next day after promising to return soon. After several days, Samoset did return with another Native American who amazed us all with his flawless English. His name was Squanto, and he said he was the last surviving member of the Patuxet tribe. Squanto stayed with us that whole spring and summer. He taught our men how to hunt and how to fish. He taught the women how to plant and cultivate corn, squash, and beans. Squanto helped us to make friends with the neighboring tribes. With his help, we signed a peace treaty with King Massasoit. We learned that our seeds from England did not grow very well in the New World, but Squanto showed us that if we planted our seeds with herring, then they would grow.
To see how they kind of helped each other. Very interesting. All right, let me go ahead and stop there and talk about any questions you guys might have. Hopefully you learned a little bit about Thanksgiving.
Oh, hi, Susan. May I have
Hi.
a question?
Sure.
I'd like to ask, which is about Thanksgiving, and you ate turkey. So, what did you probably put in turkey as usually does the Americans did?
We put it in the oven with a lot of butter on it, and it cooks for hours and hours and hours. And then you kind of sit it out and you carve it, which means you slice it. And then you put your cranberry sauce, stuffing, potatoes, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, bread, gravy, a vegetable, and then you have all your desserts.
Oh, thanks. Thank you.
Sure.
I don't think there are anybody who have questions.
Okay.
So I think they're pretty silent today.
Okay. Nobody has questions in the chat. Hopefully you guys learned a lot about Thanksgiving today and about, what happened when the settlers came from, England and landed on Plymouth Rock. We don't know if that's the real rock or not, but thank you guys for being here. I'm thankful for you. Have a great rest of your evening, and I'll see you soon.